A communist country, devastated by bombs, decided to become the world's capitalist factory. Today, the nation that defeated the United States assembles the phones you use every day. Welcome to Plexo. December 15, 1986, Hanoi. As 1,129 delegates filled the hall of the 6th National Party Congress, inflation outside hit a brutal 453.5%. Money was worthless. Citizens hauled sacks of devalued banknotes just to get a miserable ration of rice. Nguyen Van Linh, a war veteran, grabbed the microphone. He had spent decades hiding in the southern jungles, fighting for the revolution. But now he faced a worse enemy: total economic collapse. The Soviet-style central planning system had failed spectacularly. From that podium, Lin spoke two words that would change Asian history: doi moi. It meant renovation. In practice, it was a direct order to dismantle the socialist model and embrace free markets without letting go of political control. The state allowed private property, freed prices, and opened borders to foreign capital. It was pure survival. Bonfires in the streets, where merchants burned stacks of dong because they were worth less than firewood, forced the government to act. Vietnamese communism signed its pact with capitalism. They would keep the red flag with the yellow star, but money would flow by Western rules. The party called it renovation. History will remember it as the greatest ideological contradiction of the 20th century. The transition was painful, but the real explosion came in February 1994. U.S. President Bill Clinton lifted the trade embargo against Vietnam, erasing decades of hostility. Overnight, the country became the most coveted destination for multinationals looking to escape rising labor costs in China. Western corporations poured in billions of dollars. Nike, Adidas, and textile giants started building sheet metal factory sheds at a frantic pace. The rice paddies that had defined Vietnam's landscape for centuries were paved over with concrete to build massive free trade zones. The change was brutal. Peasants who once plowed the land with water buffalo now sat on endless assembly lines under fluorescent lights, sewing sneakers for 12-hour shifts. The wage was minimal, but for a population that had known extreme hunger, it was a leap into modernity. Vietnam offered the world a young, disciplined, and dirt-cheap workforce. The government guaranteed social peace by banning independent strikes and ensuring a predictable environment for investors. The formula worked. Exports skyrocketed exponentially. The country went from exporting basic agricultural goods to becoming a global manufacturing powerhouse. The ports of Haiphong and Ho Chi Minh City filled with containers ready to sail to Western markets. In less than a decade, a country that had emerged from war with empty pockets was exporting over $11 billion a year. Nobody in the party had planned it that way. The real turning point came in 2008, when South Korean giant Samsung bet its future on Vietnam. With an initial investment that quickly ballooned into billions, the company turned the northern province of Thanh Nguyen into its global stronghold. What was once a quiet rural area became a titanic industrial complex. Today, the Thanh Nguyen factory is the largest smartphone plant on Earth. Roughly 60,000 Vietnamese workers file through its gates every day, wearing spotless anti-static uniforms. The scale of the operation is hard to grasp. Armored trucks loaded with millions of microchips and components race down the country's highways under heavy security. Inside these facilities, more than 50% of all Samsung phones sold worldwide are assembled. This mutual dependency reshaped the national economy. In 2024, Samsung's subsidiaries accounted for over 13% of Vietnam's GDP. One foreign company had become the indispensable engine of a sovereign communist nation. The Vietnamese government handed out massive tax breaks, subsidized land, and built custom infrastructure to keep South Korean executives happy. In return, Samsung brought in hundreds of international suppliers, creating a tech ecosystem that lifted Vietnam up the global value chain. They no longer just stitched sneakers for Western brands, they now built the most advanced technology on the planet. But the bigger that ecosystem grew, the more vulnerable it became to a single decision made in Seoul. The massive injection of foreign capital spawned a powerful new upper class. Doi Moi had promised prosperity for all, but in practice it created an elite of billionaires with fortunes rivaling those in the West. The skyline of Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon, changed drastically. Glass skyscrapers like the iconic landmark 81 pierced the clouds, housing luxury penthouses and malls full of European brands. The contrast on the streets became extreme and impossible to ignore. On one hand, Rolls-Royce and Ferrari dealerships opened their doors to satisfy the whims of new real estate oligarchs. On the other, street vendors still cooked bowls of pho on the sidewalk for just $2. The most iconic image of this vibrant chaos was the traffic, millions of Honda motorbikes roaring in unison, dodging sports cars on clogged avenues. Real estate became the country's fastest money printing machine. Banks handed out massive loans to finance colossal residential projects, fueling an unprecedented speculative bubble. Land, theoretically owned by the people under communist law, was leased and traded at astronomical prices. Average GDP growth in the decade before 2024 was 6.2% per year, a dazzling pace that blinded regulators. Easy money flowed through the financial system's arteries, hiding a web of corruption, bribes, and cronyism between private developers and high-ranking party officials. What no one had calculated was the exact price of that negligence: $27 billion. The illusion of endless prosperity shattered in October 2022 with the arrest of Truong Mylan. The chairwoman of real estate giant Van Thin Phat had orchestrated the biggest financial fraud in Southeast Asian history. It was a devastating blow to the heart of the banking system. Lan secretly controlled Saigon Commercial Bank. For over a decade, she used thousands of shell companies to drain the institution's coffers. She issued illegal loans that made up 93% of the bank's total credit, directly pocketing $12.5 billion. The total financial damage from the fraud reached $27 billion. The sheer audacity surpassed any fiction. The scale of the looting was laid bare in court, armored vans hauling $108 trillion in physical cash through Ho Chi Minh City's congested streets, from the bank's vaults to the basement of her private mansion. The fallout was seismic. The state had to inject $24 billion to prevent a total collapse of the financial system, while thousands of depositors lost their life savings. In April 2024, a court sentenced Truong Mylan to death, an unusually harsh punishment designed to send a chilling message to corrupt elites. The scandal exposed deep cracks in the model of breakneck growth. This country built in 4 decades what other nations took a century to achieve. Vietnam didn't need to invade markets, it offered itself up as conquerable territory. And that pact, it called sovereignty.